You're listening to the A Connector podcast with host Mark Foreman. Let's get connecting. Yeah. So we're recording now, and this is Mark Foreman with A Connector, welcoming my friend and my replacement in New York City, my surrogate over there. His name is Ed Yu. How you doing, Ed?
What's up, Mark? How are you?
Good. So, why don't you fill us in? Like, what's going on lately? I mean, I've been watching you on Instagram. So, what the hell happened to your world over there?
The world is upside down, my friend. So yeah, New York went into lockdown, I think about 3 months ago, give or take.
Right.
And it's been very interesting. I mean, just from my standpoint, or any curious person's standpoint, and especially if you have some sort of if you gravitate towards photography or video or any sort of documentation, it's been interesting because I've been. I'm not the guy that's sitting indoors a lot, and as you know, because you follow me on Instagram, I'm out quite a bit photographing and trying to document this very odd, unprecedented time.
Right. So let me get some background. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I've just been out a lot during the lockdown.
Right. Okay, so now you've always been masking up when you go out during the lockdown? I
mean, personally, I mask up only when I'm indoors or in the subway.
Okay.
When I'm just walking up on the street, I do not.
Right. Well, no, that's sensible. I mean, okay, I should get some background here. Me being in Taiwan, and actually Taiwan was one of the first place, that was dealing with it, because obviously this round of it appears to have started in China. And so, Taiwan has a history with SARS. And so they really got right on it and, stay in, because it hit right around the end of the Chinese New Year. So people were already off, kids were off from school and whatnot. And here, like Korea and China and Japan, people already have a custom of, okay, I've got a little bit of a sniffle, wear a mask. I've got allergies, or I have a sensitive nose, I'm worried about pollution, wear a mask. I'm worried about someone else having a cold, wear a mask. So it doesn't mean anything. You see people with masks on here in Asia, and you don't even give it a second glance. Okay? So, I know in America it's been a big thing because, like, the mask has become very politicized, hasn't it?
Like everything, yes.
Yeah, like everything, for crying out loud. I mean, when I lived in America way back when, it wasn't like that. And unfortunately, not just America, and I think social media is one of the key culprits, but the world is becoming, you like Coke, I like Pepsi, I have to kill you. It's like we won't be drinking cola together. Not just, won't we be drinking cola, but you're my mortal enemy. I have to kill you now because you drink the other cola.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, it's gone to those extremes in some cases. In a lot of cases, I guess, especially politically, and culturally to a degree. But and if you hear some background noise, I do live in Brooklyn in an apartment, so I don't know if you heard that motorcycle go by.
Okay, well, you're talking to the Brooklyn Bluesman. So where in Brooklyn are you living, Ed?
I live in a neighborhood called Prospect Lefferts Gardens. It's I guess the greater Flatbush area. I'm not a native to this area. I just moved here probably about a little over 4 years ago. Probably about 4.5. Yeah, it's June, so about 4.5 years ago, roughly. I took over a lease from a friend, and I've been here since. It was a neighborhood I didn't know much about. It was like most New Yorkers. We kind of were looking for cheap rent. So,
of course, and they're hard to find.
It's a rent-stabilized building. Yeah, so I just when I found out what the rent was. I told her, hey, I'll be right over. So,
sure.
So 4.5 years later, I'm still here.
So is it kind of like Park Slope-ish?
It's what's the word to use? Park Slope's pretty refined at this point in
Oh,
time.
okay. Pretty
Park Slope,
gentrified.
yeah, let's use that. I guess that's a commonly used word. It's
Yeah.
well, Park Slope. It's had a big head start, but not only that, Park Slope, I think, just is one of those idyllic sort of Brooklyn brownstone neighborhoods.
Right.
The streets are just littered with those gorgeous brownstones, and as money started coming in into that neighborhood, they've really fixed up those and beautified the buildings, the brownstones, and the neighborhood as a whole.
Right. Because I'm originally from Midwood. Do you know where that is?
Okay.
You know where
exactly
Brooklyn
where that
College is? Yeah.
I know where that is. That's off the 2 train, I believe. No.
Off the which
Or
one?
is it the? Yeah. Is it off the 2?
I want to. It's been so long.
I know where it is. I know where it is, but I've never really been there because I've never really had a reason to go there.
Right.
But I know where Midwood is. That's where. What's that?
Okay, Brooklyn College is in Midwood. I mean, Brooklyn College is right next door to Midwood High School.
Okay, so that's off the Q train, I think, or the B possibly.
Actually, the D. It's close to the D.
Okay.
And, that's on the elevated line. And then if you're on the IRT, I want to say the 1 or the 6, and it actually ends at the junction, which would be Flatbush and Nostrand. So
right.
we call the junction is where Flatbush Avenue and Nostrand Avenue come together.
So I live off, so that's a little, Flatbush Avenue, but closer to the city.
Sure.
So, I know Midwood primarily for, the famous pizza place called...
DeFara's.
What's that?
DeFara's.
DeFara's, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Sorry, a noisy motorcycle was going by.
That's okay. Yeah, actually, DeFara's as a kid, it was just a neighborhood pizza place, and because I was kind of like not super close to my house, it was closer to like my friend's house, and that was it was a good walk for me, So I went there a few times, and then the last few years it's blown up so huge on the internet. I'm kind of like, wow, this was just like a pizza place in my youth, and now it's like the pizza place. So, but they have good pizza without a doubt.
It's a product of social media.
Oh yeah. Now that kind of a product of social media.
A lot of these...
Go ahead. We're getting a little lag. You go ahead, Ed.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You broke up a little bit there.
That's okay.
But yeah, no, it's it's a product of social media. I get caught up in it too. I'll see a beautiful food item on Instagram, and then I have to find out where it is. And oftentimes, I do these little food adventures, and I mix it in with doing a little street photography, and it works out very well.
Yeah, that's the way to do it.
Exactly.
Okay, speaking of photography, I mean,
yeah. So
I want to ask you now. Did you grow up in New York?
I grew up. I actually my short/long bio is I was actually born in Seoul, Korea.
Okay.
And came to the States when I was probably about a year and a half, maybe 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I was to L.A., Los Angeles, and then lived there till I was about 10. And then the family packed up the truck, and we did a little road trip out east, and I've been in New York since.
Okay, so were you guys living in Gardena, California, by any chance?
I've heard the name, but I have no idea where Gardena is.
Yeah, that's kind of a big Korean area in L.A. So I was just curious if it was there. Anyway, all right. So your family moved to New York, and you moved to Queens. Is that it?
Yes, it was the first area or borough, and then eventually moved out to Long Island.
Okay. Now, it's kind of interesting because you say Long Island, all right, let's just say for the sake of this podcast, we're all New Yorkers, okay? I mean, that's where I'm from. That's where I grew up. I've lived in Taiwan much longer than I ever lived in New York, but that's another book. All right. So as New Yorkers, we talk about Queens, we talk about Brooklyn, we talk about the city, and we talk about Long Island. When I moved to Arizona to go to college, my first roommate was from Japan. He didn't speak English very well, and I was looking to make conversation with him. So I asked him one time, hey, what was it like growing up on an island? And he gave me like a real puzzled look. I could tell, like, I don't think this is just an English thing. I could see he doesn't really know how to answer that question. About 2 days later, it dawned on me, I'm from Brooklyn, and where is Brooklyn? Brooklyn is on Long Island, or the Long Island. Now, the problem with New Yorkers, and you know where I'm going with this, because of our geopolitical orientation, Long Island has a different meaning. What does it mean? Nassau and Suffolk counties is Long Island, right?
Right.
But it actually is on the Long Island, but because we're so, geared towards the geopolitical thing, we simply don't think of the purely geographical thing. So anyway, all right, so where were you on Long Island, just out of curiosity?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Where were you living on Long Island?
I graduated. I went to, I lived in Syosset.
Syosset?
Went to Syosset Junior High School.
Okay.
And I graduated from Syosset High School.
Okay, yeah, I have friends out that way. I went to camp with a bunch of kids from Long Island. So, all right, so let's get back to the photography thing. So you basically came to the U.S. as a baby. Family, big family?
2 younger brothers and mom and dad.
Okay, so wow. I got to give a lot of props to your mom having a house full of men like that. But anyway, all right. So so it's 3 boys all together. And I mean, what got you interested in photography? And I'm sure you were looking at it before you picked up a camera, or how did that come about?
I think I've had these on and off moments with my interest in that medium. I was a little bit interested during high school, and then I just fell out of interest because, like most teenagers, I was just kind of doing the teenage thing, on Long Island. We were sneaking in drinks and getting drunk and learning how to get drunk and girls and all that fun stuff.
Teenage boy kind of stuff.
I didn't get it. Yeah, and then fast forward maybe about 10 years or somewhere around there, I was working as a production assistant on TV commercials in the city, and would oftentimes be in the truck. We drive around in trucks to do pickup equipment and things of that nature before the film shoots, and then we have to return those items after the film shoot. And so oftentimes I was in the truck with a guy named Jack Cahill that was introduced to me by a good friend of mine. And Jack and I became really good friends. And actually, I saw him the other day. We're still very good friends. And he was a real badass photographer. He at the time was doing a documentary on hobos that ride the trains primarily through the United States. But I got some footage of going. Maybe I think he might have some footage of Canada too, but I could be wrong about that. But it just when as you probably know, living in Taiwan at this point for whatever amount of time you've been there,
33 years.
The Asian mindset. Wow, I did not know that. That's bananas. 33 years. Holy moly.
Yeah. So I came here when I was one. No, just kidding.
I mean, you've lived there longer than you've lived in the States.
I've lived there almost. I've lived here almost twice as long as I lived in New York, and I've lived here longer than I have in the States. Yeah.
Wow, that's bananas.
Mm-hmm. Mad world.
I've often thought about living the expat lifestyle, but never never had the cojones to do it.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it's a cojones issue. I mean, it just it's timing and interest and fate and whatever. But in a lot of ways, it's like you and I kind of have a similar course, but just kind of like reverse the directions, right? I've been in your hometown.
Yeah, I guess.
The last time I was in Seoul, Korea was the year of the Olympics in '88. And that was an interesting thing. But
yeah, I mean, I was just back there in October for the first time in probably a little over a decade. But yeah, let me backtrack to your initial question. So basically, I'd be in this little in this truck with Jack, my buddy, And one day we went back to his apartment. I think maybe to use the bathroom. I can't remember. He lives in the East Village, and somehow he was rifling through a box of just 8x10 black and white negatives that he'd taken. So this was a self-financed documentary he was working on.
Okay.
So basically every summer he would go out. So during the year, most of the year he would just work, and then during the summers he would go out with his small crew. And he took still photographs as well as they were shooting a documentary on. But the still photography, the photos that I saw were amazing. I mean, just the backdrop too, and he's with these hobos and they're in the middle of nowhere, America, just back roads as you can imagine,
Mm-hmm.
and I was fascinated. Camera that I did not know how to use, an old Pentax film camera.
Was it a medium format?
No, it was a little 35.
Okay, so an SLR.
Camera. And I can't remember the model number. It wasn't the K1000. It was another model, but it was something of that ilk. And pretty basic camera. So I didn't know how to use it. I remember being on a Rolling Stones job, and I had that camera. We took a bunch of film and shot it during the course of that music video that I worked on, and all of it came out. Which
video was that?
90.
Do you remember the song name?
It was the Bridges to Babylon. One of their later albums, Bridges to Babylon.
Right. Okay.
And Have you seen my lady, or have you seen my girl? I think was the name of the track. And that actually was Angelina Jolie before she became super famous.
Right.
Yeah, and I was tasked to pick her up at the hotel every
Whoa.
morning for that. Yes. But I didn't know who she was at the time. She had a shaved head, like literally, like
really?
Like boot camp. Yeah.
That kind of doesn't surprise me, because I think there's definitely a nutty streak in that woman.
Yeah. I mean, she was very unique looking, and
I'll bet.
And I remember, the first time I picked her up, I was looking through the rearview mirror, and it was just us. She was sitting in the back row of a 15-passenger van, and I just remember thinking to myself, "Wow, what an interesting face."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm talking boot camp short hair.
Right.
And if you dig up the video, it's on YouTube. I dug it up. I don't know, for the first time in many moons about a year ago. It's on. It's like, have you seen my lady, or have you seen my woman?
Mm-hmm.
But you'll see what I'm talking about when you pull it up. But yeah. So I asked Jack, hey, how do I take photos like this? And he started educating me. This is what an f-stop is, and this is what that does. This is that, and this is your shutter speed, and the relationship. Let's lie. All that stuff. Hey, and then he gave me a good bit of advice. He said, hey, find a black and white course, a basic black and white course, and just take it. So I signed up for a black and white course at FIT, and learned a lot. I learned how to do, not only shoot the film, but develop it and print it in the darkroom.
So FIT actually
super fun back in the day, and I was really into it.
FIT actually offers photography courses in addition to fashion.
This is many moons ago, so I can't answer that question with any certainty, but my guess would be yes.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that. Well, so great. So basically,
dark room too.
You had a dark room in the classroom, or did you set up a dark room at home back then?
Well, eventually I had access to one through Jack, my buddy, who had a dark room set up somewhere uptown. And then so I would, him and I would go up and print some stuff periodically. And then I had a buddy of mine, this guy Phil, who we set up a darkroom in his father's basement, but it was a pain in the butt for me. His father lived all the way out in Bayville, Long Island, and it's not super far, but it's not close.
Sounds like a schlep.
Yeah, we had a. What's that?
I said it sounds like a schlep. You have picked up on some Yiddish, haven't you? You've been living in New York so long, you must know some Yiddish words.
Listen, a lot of my close friends are Jewish.
Of course,
and I grew up. Even though I went to Syosset High School, I lived in my actual home was in Jericho, Long Island.
Jericho,
and I lived probably about 100 yards or 200 yards from a temple. So yes, I've picked up a couple of words here and there.
Sure. And the funny thing too is, and it's more apparent to me living here in Asia, but Jews of course are also Asian people. If you look where Israel is, it's the Middle East. Okay. It's basically Eastern, right. It's, Middle Eastern Asia. So there's a lot of similarities in the culture. They're all old races, the Chinese, the Koreans, the Arabs, the Jews, the Persians, and so the Indians. So there's a lot of similarities in the culture. And interestingly, that people from those different cultures can all kind of communicate well because there's a lot of similarities. And so, it's the funny thing is, like, I've never heard your voice before today, but like all of our communication together, it's like I feel it's like, yeah, Ed, I know this guy, and you read kind of Jewish to me, which again makes sense because you're living in New York, and also, you're an Asian guy. Your family's originally from. So it just makes sense in my head.
Yeah, no, I get it. But I've often been called, hey, you sound Italian. Or I guess it just depends on who I'm talking to. But yeah, I totally get it.
Well, then again, too, and let's look at this. Where is Italy? Italy is in the Mediterranean, which is like not even a hop, skip, and a jump from the Middle East, just a hop. Okay, and they have a lot of Arab mixed in their culture. If you look at them,
right?
Whether they're, obviously they're going to identify as Italian in the Roman culture, but inevitably, they're everything is a fusion. Okay. All cultures, interact, whether it be through food or geographical location or trade or whatever. So it's like, a lot of people have the map, a lot of people lose the map, and then go on a journey to refine the map. Oh, okay. Like we were talking before I hit record on the Mongol-Korean connection, and therefore the Korean-Turk connection via the Mongol colonization. So it's the world is like full of this kind of history and interaction through proximity or colonization or trade, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, well, I don't want to hijack the narrative. All right. So you had your master in your butt, and now your good friend Jack. You're kind of his grasshopper acolyte at the time. You're learning all kinds of great stuff. You've got a skinhead Angelina Jolie in the back of your van. And you're being a gentleman, though, keeping your eyes on the road and your hands on the wheel, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. As a good PA should be doing, yes.
Okay. So at this time, now, how did you get this job in the first place? Was it something you responded to off an ad, or did you have a connection? This is something, how'd you get this job? As the, video assistant, or?
So I think, in one of our previous text message sessions, I mentioned that I went to Arizona State.
That's right, you did. I don't even know why. You're a scum devil.
Yeah, so I did 4 years in Arizona. Not all during school, but I stayed a little bit afterwards. But I lived in Arizona for 4 years. Part of that going to school. I lived in Tempe. I lived in Mesa, and I've also lived in Paradise Valley.
PV.
But I brought that up because it has nothing to do with the PA thing. To answer your question, basically my buddy, who I'm still very close with, who's actually from Syosset, and we actually, here's the Arizona part. We actually went to college together.
Okay.
In Arizona, even though I wasn't really great friends with him at the time, we became very good friends out there just because we were both. He was a year older, and just because we were both from Syosset. But so he eventually landed a job as a production assistant, and at the time when I was working in New York, shortly after I got back from Arizona, I was working as a stockbroker, and I absolutely despised it.
Mm-hmm.
And he would call me up and tell me what he was doing, what project he was working on, and it just sounded that was more my speed. And after I don't know X amount of conversations with him, one day I walked into my boss's office and gave him my 2-week notice, called my buddy up and said, "Hey, I need a job," and that's kind of how I got into the biz.
Cool. So at that time, I'm guessing mid-20s about then, or something like that.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit older. I was kind of an old PA.
Okay.
I was 27, maybe 26. I can't remember exactly, but somewhere around there.
Okay.
And yeah, so that's kind of like the film business. And when I say film business, I'm not working on blockbuster movies or anything like that. I primarily work on the advertising / TV commercial side of it.
Yeah, the less sexy stuff, the day-to-day kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Occasionally you'll work with some, big name people,
right?
Actors, but typically, yes, it's the kid eating the Cheerios at the kitchen table, that kind of stuff.
Mikey likes it.
Exactly. So that's how I got into the film biz. I'm still in it, 20-something years later. In a different capacity, I've worked in actually many of the departments. I had a short stint as a camera assistant, worked on the production side for many moons, and now currently location manager and scout. So and that's kind of more my speed. I just it affords me to stretch my legs. I don't have anybody looking over my shoulder. And I can get out there with some, idea of what type of location that the project needs, and I do my thing, and it's a lot better than sitting behind a cubicle all day long.
Right. Okay, so do you actually make any money from your street photography / street videography at present?
I've never made a dime. I never really had a burning desire to try to monetize it. Mm-hmm. I've had a bunch of friends, tell me, "Hey, why don't you try to sell?" I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little defeatist, but I'm always kind of like, how much money can you make doing this stuff? So with that said, after many moons of people telling me I should do something, I'm in the process of trying to get a website together. Finally. So at some point, who knows? Maybe I'll try to sell a photo or two.
Right. Well, okay. Yeah. I mean, interesting what you said. And I think the determining factor there is, obviously it's different for everyone. Some people, they're all about marketing and not about content. Some people are all about content and about marketing. I mean, usually, like if you look at the art world, it's usually like the really, really intense or amazing artists don't even have a clue about business. It's probably the last thing they think about. Of course, they get screwed, and they probably, die penniless. And then, after they're dead, they have some enterprising guy, takes their stuff and just makes billions of dollars off of them. If you look throughout history, or then the other model is they had patrons like an emperor or a prince or princess that would basically pay them to paint their picture and the family picture, and so they had enough money to go and paint other stuff. And so, really, in a lot of ways, photography is just kind of like a different technology for doing painting. Instead of doing it by hand and with oil paints, you're doing it, with chemical emulsion or now with digital images. But the thing is, I think I'm not surprised that in your answer, because because I'm doing a similar thing. I mean, you're doing it because you love it. You're out there every day or often because it's a turn on. It's juice. You get high on the damn thing.
I tell you, I tell all my friends this. It's the only thing other than traveling, and traveling and photography in my world kind of go hand in hand. It's the only thing that really gets me jazzed up. You don't have to. I won't be kicking and screaming headed out the door. Let's put it that way. I'm usually pretty excited to get out the door, and oftentimes I don't even know where I'm headed.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I end up in the same neighborhoods.
Right.
I shoot in Chinatown quite a bit. I like the look of Chinatown.
Yeah, me too, Ed.
Of like the old New York. Yeah, you're in a permanent Chinatown.
Exactly.
Yes.
I'm in a big Chinatown.
But yes, yes. But yeah, I oftentimes I don't even know where I'm headed. I just go with the flow. I just start walking. The train to wherever, or sometimes I just walk from my apartment, depending on if I want to shoot in Brooklyn. And then I just start walking, and then wherever it takes me through the day. And oftentimes I'm gone all day. As I mentioned, sometimes it's driven. The neighborhood or where I'm planning on heading to is driven by hunger or food.
Right.
So while I'm out working up some hunger, I'll get hey, I want a gyro. So I'll head towards Astoria where I know there's good gyros to be had, or whatever it is.
Sure.
Maybe I'll go out to Flushing, Queens, which is one of the other Chinatowns, and I know what to get out there. There's a certain type of dumpling that I like, and so sometimes it's dictated by my stomach, depending on where I end up.
It's real. It's natural. It's in the moment.
Yeah, and listen, I've got the good fortune to live in an amazing city. I mean,
for sure,
it's a very diverse city. It's a city full of characters, city full of amazing faces.
Oh yeah,
I mean, it's just like walking around it. And I often think to myself, how difficult it must be for street photographers that come from like really small areas, towns, or villages where everybody walking around is someone or grew up with, and trying to do street photography in that sort of environment versus a big city like New York or Paris or Tokyo or Taipei, where there's a zillion people out and about walking
or
around.
Hong Kong.
Hong Kong, another amazing. I mean, I've only been there for a few days once, and I fell in love with that city.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of parallels with New York.
Oh, definitely. But
I mean, those, living in those type of cities, you have the great benefit of, I call it a target-rich environment.
Oh yeah. See, well, okay, you touched on an interesting thing because, being from New York and I wasn't into photography. I mean, I looked at photographs. Actually, I met a really famous photographer that was based there. I'll talk about him maybe a little bit later. But the thing is, where I am now is because I don't have an Empire State Building. I don't even have Taipei 101. That's up in Taipei. Where I am, it's purely people with an interesting expression, interesting lighting, ordinary people, not too much amazing background. And so the thing that I realize is, I'm challenged because I don't have all the low-hanging fruit that you big famous city guys do. Now, that being said, I don't think that diminishes in any way a good photographer living in New York or Paris or London or Tokyo, etc. However, let's be honest, it's almost hard to take bad pictures there if for no other reason than background alone. You know what I mean? Even an ordinary picture is going to have some amazing background and context, or fashionistas or whatever. But of course, you still have to go out looking for the good targets, looking for the good shots. I mean, the Brooklyn Bridge is always going to be the Brooklyn Bridge, and it's an amazing structure. And it's like, if I had the Brooklyn Bridge there, would I shoot it? Damn Skippy, I'd shoot it. Why wouldn't you shoot it? Right?
I mean, for me, I because there are so many monuments or really well-known buildings and bridges and structures in general here in New York that are just famous worldwide, there are people that can shoot that stuff way better than me. Mm-hmm. They have these gorgeous bridge shots or a beautiful shot of whatever, the Empire State Building. I typically don't really – I shoot it, don't get me wrong, but I don't gravitate towards just shooting a urban landscape shot per se. And I have that stuff, and I do it often. I just don't post that stuff. It's not as interesting to me.
I know what you mean.
I like people. I like motion.
Yep.
So that's typically
we're kindred spirits, brother. There's a reason why I was attracted. I mean, because let's face it. I guess I saw some of me and you, and so I'm kind of like, all right, this guy's channeling me, or maybe I'm channeling him. So let's get a conversation going.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you reaching out. This is awesome. So thanks for having me. But yeah, I just my thing is I like people, I like faces, I like motion in my photography. If you look at my Instagram stuff, especially my more recent stuff within the last couple of years, it's typically there's always somebody in the frame.
Right.
Occasionally I'll do one of those, photographs of just whatever, the bridge or whatever it is.
Right.
But it's fairly rare. But like I said, if I'm there photographing, trying to find some sort of a cool shot, and the bridge happens to be in the background, in those moments where I'm waiting for that, person to materialize or whatever, the scene to materialize, I'll fire off a few shots of the bridge, just some static shots of the bridge.
Right.
And, if you look through my hard drive, there's probably a ton of that stuff. But I typically that's not what I gravitate towards. I do like
I totally
shooting
get that.
people.
I totally get that. I mean, I'm very much the same way now. Now, for example, maybe someone else will post an amazing shot of the bridge, and I'll look at it and I'll like, wow, that is such a great photograph, and I'll go ahead and take a shot like that.
Oh yeah,
and like it, but it's just like I almost feel like I'm cheating if there's not a person in it for context, or if the person is not the focal point of the image. It's almost like I'm dishonoring what my muse is all about. I mean, that's just how I'm wired. That's just how I roll.
Right. Yeah. I'm kind of the same ilk.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, I think, I don't know, on my Instagram page, a handful of shots back, I took a picture of a scene, and the bridge was in the background. So if there is some sort of a Brooklyn Bridge or something of that nature, I will try to frame it up. So,
my name is Lior. You are listening to A Connector podcast with Mark Foreman. Sababa.
There is somebody that's either walking by whatever it is, the famous store or the landmark, like the Brooklyn Bridge,
right,
or whatever it is. I'll try to shoot a scene with maybe that in the background. So I mean, that's kind of my thing. Is just going back to Chinatown. I think I'm thinking about it now, and I think what I really like about Chinatown in Manhattan, that is, because for people out there that don't know, there are several Chinatowns.
Right.
In fact, there are increasing amounts of Chinatown. Yeah, I would say there's almost like you got the Brooklyn Chinatown, you got in Sunset Park, you've got Manhattan Chinatown, then you've got Flushing, but then you've got large populations of Chinese people in other neighborhoods.
Sure.
In Brooklyn, in Queens, and not so much in Manhattan, but Brooklyn. Sheepshead Bay, which was heavily Italian American back in the day.
Oh, is that becoming Chinese now?
Very large. It's a huge Chinese population out there. And not too far from like Midwood, a little bit more towards Flatbush Avenue, like towards Avenue U. It's kind of like a Russian,
right,
ex-Soviet people from the ex-Soviet Union / Chinese people, and there's a fairly large Chinese population out there too. So you almost have these little micro Chinatowns too,
cool,
on top of the bigger Chinatowns.
All right, go Brooklyn.
It's a rapidly growing demographic.
Right. Well, when I was a kid in Brooklyn, I had some special privileges. I mean, I was a single parent kid. My mom, and she gave me a lot of freedom. I mean, we had some basic guidelines like, okay, Mark, I trust you. You're a bright kid. You're a good kid. Now, here's the rules. It's like you can go wherever you want to go because I know that you're a sensible kid and you know when you need to be back. And if for some reason you're not going to make it back when you need to be, you're going to give me a call and let me know where you are and when you will be back. And as long as we do that, we're all good. And so I had the freedom to hop on the subway as a 12-year-old and go from Brooklyn into Manhattan and roam, man. Now, What was I doing there? I didn't have a camera with me, but I did have the most important camera, which is your eyes and your brain. Because as you know, as a photographer, and for people that are listening, if you're interested or doing it, just think about this. The most primary camera you have is in your head. You need to learn to look with your eyes and compose with your eyes and frame with your eyes and go beyond what you're seeing and just get into the soul of what you're seeing with your eyes and your brain. And then, then the equipment, the tool, follows along. But if you don't do that and you just have this tool in your hand, what the hell do you do with it? So I didn't realize it then, of course, but truly, there's so much to see in Manhattan. Whether it's buildings, people, fashion, forums, every kind of look, every kind of color, every kind of shade. And the other thing too is with me, I'm a language person, so I was getting off on all these accents. I'd pick a spot like in the Village. I think it was like, I want to say like, what's that famous basketball park? I think off of 6th on 6th Avenue, and I want to say about
West 4th Street.
There you go. Thank you. That one. So not far from there, I'd pick a spot, and I would just sit there and people watch, okay? And it would just fascinate me, and I'd be listening. I'd look at them and get a sense, okay, I bet this person's from there, and then I hear them speak, I'm like, okay, yeah, they're native, but they're not from New York. Or yeah, I think they're from Korea. I could tell by the way they're speaking, it sounds like a Korean accent, or maybe a French accent, or whatever it was.
The same way.
And I would trip, man. I would just totally trip. You know what I'm saying?
Oftentimes I play this game of like, where are they from? So
exactly.
Listen, as I mentioned before, I think we're similar in some ways like that, and but also
brothers from different mothers, from other mothers, huh?
Yeah, we've had access to this amazing city. I mean, you haven't lived here in a while, but you had it growing up.
Oh yeah,
and it obviously shaped you.
Oh yeah,
and yeah, so it's we had that.
Let's go Mets.
We had that good fortune. I'm a Met fan. I don't know if you guessed that or I told you, but I'm a Met fan.
Hey, I come from a family. My grandmother and my great uncle, they were all Dodger fans, and they were all heartbroken over the Dodgers leaving for L.A. So they all switched to the Mets. Forget about the Yankees. That's like enemy territory. Don't even go there.
Well, yeah, back in the day, with Brooklyn Dodgers. It made sense, but a lot of Yankee fans in Brooklyn these days.
Of course, And
I don't live too far from Ebbets Field, or there's just a.
Oh, so you're over that way?
Yeah, I don't live far from there. I could probably walk there from here in 15, 20 minutes.
There used to be a big Wonder Bread bakery over there. I don't know what's there now.
Is that right?
Yeah, it was a huge.
That's funny.
Yeah, because that just kind of like that just catty corner to like the closer end of the park. The like towards Sheepshead Bay end, not the city end. Not the what's the arch, Grand Army Plaza, not that end, but the closer. Yeah, yep. The other end, the closer end. So over that way, interesting history over there. That side of the park, there used to be an old fast food chain that doesn't exist anymore called Wesson's. Okay, and there used to be like two different gangs. I'm talking about some hard boys, man, not like poser gangs. Real gangs, and I forget I forget their names, but actually each of them had their battle song, and it was a different Kool in the Gang song. One of them was like Jungle Boogie, and one of them was whatever. And it's like, and when they would come, so they would have, they'd have their music going, and a lot of times they'd score off, very close to where you're living over that way. And I found that out from a musician friend of mine that's also from Brooklyn. Okay, well, I don't want to hide. I'm loving, it's so good for me to hear, some New York talk to kind of get me up to speed.
I'm glad I can spark up some memories.
Yeah.
For you.
Now, you're doing more. Okay, you're doing more video. What I'd like to steer this a little bit because like I don't know, maybe about a month ago, it's like I woke up one morning and it's like, okay, let me go into Twitter, and I call Twitter. I don't know if you're a Nine Inch Nails fan, but I call Twitter, my pretty hate machine. So it's kind of like, okay, let's see what everyone, it's like a beautiful little box that people are, make a habit of hating on each other in, and but of course there's news there and there's other stuff. So I go in there and it's like, oh. So the world is, going to hell in a handbasket. My hometown is now, looking like the French Revolution. And there's Ed with a video camera capturing some of this stuff and like, what the hell's going on? What happened here?
So you must be referring to the protests that
Right.
have been going on. I mean, obviously not just in New York, but
All over
in many parts of the world.
The world.
Yeah, I was just looking at some photographs from Poland, and
Yep.
I found that interesting. But yes, I mean, the protests broke out a couple. Geez, how long has it been?
So you guys had already been on lockdown, because how long has New York been on lockdown for prior to that, or up until now?
I'd say about three months, give or take.
Okay.
We've been on lockdown. I think the protests have been going on for roughly about 3 weeks at this point, give or take a few days.
Right.
So you had the pandemic / lockdown in New York as a backdrop, and then you had the protests breaking out all over the city, into the boroughs.
Mm-hmm.
And then the surrounding suburbs, they had some smaller protests going on out there. But yeah, it was a bit nuts. It garnered a lot of force very quickly, for obvious reasons. For people out there that don't know, in Minneapolis there was a man named George Floyd who was killed by some cops out there, specifically one guy named Officer Chauvin, I think is the pronunciation. But yes, that sparked a lot of outrage nationwide, not just here in New York, and then it filtered out into other parts of the world.
Right. Okay, so how did you get the signal? I mean, were you watching the news? Were you on Twitter? Did a buddy call and say, "Hey, Ed, things are blowing up, man. Get your camera and get out here"? Or I mean, what was it that said, "Hey, Ed, get up off your butt, get your camera, and go shoot this"?
Well, do you remember that picture I posted a few days ago? It's got the World Trade Center person going up the stairs.
Don't think I saw that one. I'll link to it in the notes.
Post.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I was trying to. That's a shot I've been trying to line up for a long time, and I've always wanted the Trade Center with some cloud or fog or something of that nature, shrouded in fog or clouds, low-hanging clouds. But so I was out photographing that day. I can't remember what day it was, but I was out photographing, and I, actually right by the West 4th Street courts, the basketball courts you mentioned, and it's got when you're looking down 6th Avenue, looking downtown south, you get an amazing view of the World Trade Center, and when I looked down there, I saw it shrouded in fog. And so I just jumped in the train, because there's a big train hub right there, and I took the train down there and set up shop.
I
this
see it
is
now.
During the lockdown, so this is
looking up the steps from the subway station.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's
so
a beautiful shot.
I'm in that stairwell. Yeah, so I'm in that stairwell, just waiting. And this is what,
of course,
it actually.
It's perfect staging. Why wouldn't you wait?
Yeah. So I'm just, it's like I said, it's a shot I've been trying to get. There's another shot of the Empire State Building. The vantage point isn't anywhere near as nice,
right,
as the World Trade Center one, but that's another shot I've been working on, trying to get a similar type shot with the Empire State in the background in a subway exit like that. So I'm down there, I post up, I'm just waiting. I finally get what I think is a pretty decent shot, and I walk out. I'm just kind of milling around outside. After I take that shot, I'm just walking around, milling around, and it's dead, because it's the lockdown, so there's no one around. I mean, there's some people around, but for New York, there's no one around. And and then all of a sudden, I just hear a commotion. And I kind of just, look behind me, and I see a very large crowd of people just rapidly descending my way. And then I see a bunch of police officers running. And that was my first encounter with the protest, just by accident.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, as it was happening. As it was first getting
Mark,
started,
I'm sorry,
basically.
I totally spaced this. Actually, before I hit the West 4th Street basketball courts, I was on 14th Street and 6th Avenue.
Okay.
So I caught a little tiny end of the protest there. It had already kind of just disappeared. There were some people that were lingering around. So I said, "Oh, wow! So they're protesting." So didn't think twice, didn't think much about it, and just started walking down towards the West 4th Street area, and then saw the Trade Center, and then went down that way and took that picture, and then I was milling around outside, and then just accidentally ran into a large body of protesters, and so, with camera in hand, I just started following them. Took us out to the West Side Highway, and then it was pretty peaceful until a few people started throwing those large orange traffic cones at some of the cops, and then it got a little bit,
messy.
Wouldn't say crazy, but the cops weren't happy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, well,
and that was my first encounter, and I don't know if that was the first day of protests ever in the city regarding George Floyd, but that was probably, I'm going to guess, if not the first, second, third day. And it was just, like I said, just getting bigger and bigger. And
had looting started at that point?
No, I don't think looting really started till possibly 5-6 days.
Was it going on all over, or just specific areas, or just anywhere?
I think primarily in Manhattan. I could be wrong. I'm sure there were other places, maybe in the boroughs, but I think the majority of it was going on in the city. Okay.
So, did Soho, like all the glass that was smashed down there, was that basically looting?
I only heard about that. I never went down there and saw any looting myself.
Okay.
There was one night, it was, I believe, a Sunday night, and I can't remember what the date was, but that was the night that I really witnessed it.
Because you told me it's all boarded up down there, and you told me they're doing art on it. Like the street artists are kind of like painting over those boards and doing some really rad stuff.
Oh, in Soho, yes. As you know, it was a haven for artists back in the day, and it's kind of for a minute the artists have sort of reclaimed it, and not all of it has been painted up. I'm talking about the plywood, but there's been some interesting art, political art, things of that nature that the artists have been painting, and it's nice. It's kind of like a free little gallery you can walk through. A lot of it pertains to the things that they're protesting about,
right?
Racism, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
That kind of stuff.
Before I forget, I want to mention that the caption for this really great shot of yours is Mount Olympus, which is really a great caption. And also, before I forget, just an editorial comment, you might have already done this, but this is really begging to be in black and white. So I'd love to see a black and white version of this someday.
What's that? The
that photo? One? Yeah, I realize why you did it in color, because the minimal color and that orange pops. That's nice, but there's the moody element.
Yeah, that
really is calling for black and white.
That orange pop is what kind of sold me on the.
Come on, you're not color. Talking. When there's no virgins on this bus. What I'm saying is, though, just the moody element there. If you do this in black and white, it'll really heighten that moody aspect to it. It's another thing. It's the same source, but just kind of a different iteration. So I think a black and white version of this would really kill.
I can't remember if I played around with it in black and white. I want to say no, but these days I've got the memory of 100-year-old. So who knows?
And is that because of just being on lockdown and easily distracted, and things are just so chaotic? Or
I think I've just done a lot of partying in my life, and
it's catching up with you, huh?
Yeah, I've killed a lot of brain cells, in my lifetime, and I've been pretty active during the lockdown. I hear of people that make comments like, I don't go anywhere but the supermarket. And to me, that's kind of bananas. I probably logged more miles on my sneakers walking around during the lockdown, and probably, I don't know, probably my whole life in a 3-month period.
Well, that's the time to do it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's been fascinating in the sense that, when you have a New York that's just completely empty.
Yeah.
I mean, it's otherworldly.
Okay, now you can relate. Okay, because off microphone, Ed and I were talking about what an early bird lifestyle I live now. Where I'm starting to wake up around 3 and out the door at 4, off and off on my bike. And now I'm relying more and more on the iPhone only because it's so easy to carry and it's with me all the time. But it's the same thing because at that time, what I love about it is like the sense of like you own this space. It's like this is your world. It's not all cluttered. It's not all distracted. You're not competing with zillions of people and sounds and vehicles and whatnot. It's much easier to focus and find, those special kind of shots. And that's kind of what, COVID has brought to you, and you're taking advantage of that. I mean, so there's definitely a positive side
COVID,
of yeah.
Yeah, COVID is early morning for me. I'm imagining at the time you're getting up, it's pretty dark out, but yes, it's very similar in that sense where, there's, especially early on in the lockdown when everybody was just frightened out of their mind. It blew me away how many, just going down these major avenues, and how big some of these avenues are and how busy they can be. I mean, it just blew me away that, they would be empty. Maybe like off, 1,000 yards down, you might see a figure crossing the street or something like that. And to me, that was the lure. I mean, I was hooked. I was like, wow, when am I ever going to get a chance? If I lived another 3-4 lifetimes, I may never see this again.
Yeah, it's totally surreal for New York City. That's otherworldly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was bananas. It was like the Twilight Zone. It was like the parallel universe.
You couldn't have written a script that well.
No, you couldn't have. And so it was fascinating to me. So for someone like you or myself or anybody that's got curiosity, and obviously that's into photography, they were out. I saw a lot of photographers out.
Sure.
I'd see somebody photographing, on a tripod or something of Grand Central Station or, things of that nature. I saw a lot of street photographers out like myself.
So how many of like
the we never?
Yeah, how many of the IG street photographers do you know by sight, or do you know Roy Savoy at all, or?
I don't know anybody.
You don't know anybody. You've probably seen them. You've probably seen each other, but you just don't.
I absolutely.
Hey, because New York is real cool. It's like it ain't cool to say, hey, who are you?
Yeah,
be cool.
Yeah. There's an element to that, no doubt.
Hey, what do you got, a problem?
I'm a solitary shooter.
That's the way to be. That's the only way to be.
Some people go out in groups.
Come on.
I don't.
You want to go in a group for a beer, for a pizza? Okay. For photography, man, you got to be owning that zone in your head.
You got to own it, and I'm I've done a lot of traveling and solo. So I'm a very.
You're a loner, Ed.
Like, what's that?
You're a loner.
You broke up. Owner?
Loner. Loner. Loner.
Oh, listen, I'm the furthest guy from a loner, but when but
photography, that doesn't mean all the time. But there's that element of, because photography is a loner's game. You have to be comfortable being on your own, and prefer being on your own during that space to achieve the best results. Other times, sure, you want to be very social and a people person, but in that space, the people person you have to be alone, and it's like you're connecting through that glass or plastic or processor or whatever the medium is, depending upon the kind of camera you're using.
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely a loner when it comes to photography. There's no doubt about that. I think what now that I'm thinking about it, I think what trained me pretty well for that was traveling solo. Mm-hmm. Even when I wasn't even into photography back in the day.
But you were shooting with your
Or
eyes,
maybe
my
I had a
friend.
camera, but it was buried in my bag. But
You were shooting
yeah,
with your
just
eyes.
traveling around by myself, I think trained me pretty well to just kind of be out there doing my own thing.
Right, right. So speaking of traveling, does it look, from your worldview, when does it look like people from New York City might be able to travel anywhere? I mean, in a few months, in a half
You
a
mean
year?
internally, or
Yeah, like on an airplane travel. I
well,
mean,
a lot of people are already traveling.
Oh, really?
For instance, I have a producer friend of mine that's in Florida that I spoke to just a couple hours ago. That he's come back and forth from Florida twice.
Okay.
And he lives in New York, but he's doing a job down there. And people are traveling. You are free to travel. However, New York today just put in some sort of the governor Cuomo just mandated that anybody flying into New York from states that have recently had huge spikes in COVID, like Florida, like I think
yeah, it's just Cuomo
Texas.
giving them the finger back because they basically said people from New York couldn't come into Florida about a month or so back.
Well, yeah, they did that. I mean, listen, I don't know if any of this stuff is enforceable, but they are saying that if you get caught, they're supposed to quarantine when they get to New York for 2 weeks.
Right.
Now, I think it's kind of the honor system thing. But however, if somehow you get ratted out and they do, put two and two together and catch you out drinking at a bar when you should be quarantining, I think the first offense fine is $2,000. So, it's a hefty little fine if they catch you.
Here in Taiwan, when it was really the strict quarantine regime, if they caught you outside when you're into quarantine, I think it was like a million NT dollar fine, which is like 30,000 US.
Wow.
Yeah, wow.
That's a
hefty fine. I'll buy you some nice camera equipment.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
30,000. Wow. Jesus.
Yep. But how about international travel? I mean, okay, you're talking about, sure, the United States is huge, and there's a zillion ways to get around the States. You can probably the most sensible way, if you're COVID sensitive, is to just get in your own vehicle and drive. Less traffic. You're in control of the space. You don't have to worry about masks, and if you're with another person, you've already vetted them. That they're not carrying. And you can just go where you need to go. But I mean, airplane travel, because this kind of applies a little bit to like part of the business I'm in and services I'm offering. Because the way I'm looking at it, I just don't see normal international travel for a while yet. Because case in point, like Taiwan has already made a list of countries that can basically start traveling here, and guess what? U.S. is not on it. The countries that are,
right.
I don't even know if Korea might be on it now. But I mean, like Hong Kong, I think is okay. Macau, Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, Japan, and that's about it. Europe is not on it.
What about mainland folks?
Well, no. Some people say that they started the party. I don't know, but no, they're not on that list. And actually, they're having a major spike. And in their capital of all places.
I heard.
Yeah. And I mean, surprise. And it's like, we know for sure that the information that they gave out is spurious at best and is, more than likely just pure BS. And, I don't want to, dwell on that too much, but no, I mean, they're not on the list. And so the thing is, like, part of what I'm doing is, it's like, okay, like companies here in Taiwan, most of my time here has been involved in international trade, import, export. And so, basically the basic sales program that like factories, manufacturers here would have is like, okay, the two key shows, like the one in the U.S. and the one in Europe, you go to them and that's it. And you meet your customers and new prospective customers. You have your booth. And so obviously you're going to, you'll probably burn through, 30 to 50,000, 60,000 easily with your staff and samples and entertaining and airfare, et cetera, et cetera. Well, now you just can't do that. All the shows are canceled. They haven't restarted yet. So where I'm coming in is saying, well, look, you can't go anywhere. That's your whole sales model. So how about, I help you do a virtual webinar, and so it's like, we'll be your booth, but via Zoom or whatever, and I'll represent for you, and we'll show off your new products and your new concepts, et cetera, and do the next best thing. And I'll save you a lot of money while you're at it, because obviously we're not going to be dealing with airplanes and hotel rooms. And I don't even need to be in your factory unless you want me there, because this is all, virtual, remote online via Zoom. So, I can't see this. I think for at least a half a year yet, it's still going to be question mark. And even then, a lot of people are like, well, do I really need to go, or can't we just do it remotely?
Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with you. I think it's probably going to be at least another 6 months or so. I mean, I didn't read the article. I just saw the headline, but I believe Europe is. I don't know if it's every EU nation or what, but they're thinking about banning Americans to travel there. So, yeah, I mean,
I wonder if that has anything to do with our illustrious POTUS.
It's possible.
Yeah,
it's possible.
Doesn't seem like he took the COVID thing too seriously.
Yeah, I mean, listen, without getting into politics, some say that the response was, the initial response to the outbreak was, not handled correctly, and I don't know what these European countries,
Well, I think,
but I mean, but I'm sure they're probably looking at the numbers now. And,
well, I think with Europe, there's two things. I think it's that. Of course, that's probably the most relevant and the most recent thing. And then beyond that, just in the president's term, he hasn't really shown a lot of love for NATO or Europe, and I think so. It's kind of like, okay, we get it. We're not really high on your priority list,
where I kind of maybe might differ. To me, it's always about money, right? Money talks, bullshit walks.
Right.
And so if you're trying to keep Americans and American dollars out of Europe in terms of tourism, Europe, a lot of countries in Europe, countries like France, Italy, they derive a big portion of their GDP from tourism.
Sure.
So, I don't know if the hatred towards the president is driving that policy per se. But yeah, I mean, I would think that like they'd want to get U.S. dollars in there right away, tourism wise.
Sure.
But who knows? Who knows? I mean, like you said, Trump has probably pissed off a few people in Europe with, not backing NATO and all the other things that they perceive to be a slight coming from the president.
Right. So here we are kind of ending up on a political note, which is almost kind of because everything is political. I mean, back when I was a kid, things were much simpler, but nowadays, I mean, everything is politicized. I'll tell you what, we've been talking it's been great. Where do you see, okay, from this point forward, how much longer do you think the protests will be going on? Does it appear to be like, well, it seems kind of like it's running out of steam, or it just kind of, it's like a dynamo, it's like its own dynamo, it's going to keep going for a while? What do you think?
Well, it's interesting because when I was talking about the protests earlier, a thought popped into my mind. So there's been a group, I think for the last day or two, that's down at City Hall, and that's been a focal point for the protests in general.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes, they either end up at City Hall or they'll start at City Hall and then move elsewhere. But there's a group there that's camped out there, and I'm trying to remember exactly. They're not marching per se; they're just camping out there. And I don't know why exactly, and I should know. But today I just got a little caught up with some work I was doing. But and I made a mental note earlier this morning when I heard the news that I should go down there and maybe see what's going on, take some photographs. But I haven't gotten around to it today. But supposedly they're going to be there for a while. You ask, is the momentum dying down? I mean, maybe the day-to-day, huge marches in every borough type thing. In that sense, probably. Like I said, I've been kind of focusing a little bit on work lately. That might be coming up on the radar. So I've been a little bit not as in tune, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I guess other people we just moved into phase 2 this past Monday. So people that were maybe not working last week are working now. So and that might have been had the time to go out there and be part of the protest movement or one of the marches is now doing work. So in that sense, I think as we start opening up more and more here, phase 2, ultimately getting to phase 3, and then phase 4, I think people are going back to work, so they're not going to have as much free time.
Sure.
To be out there. And I think that was one of the reasons why some of the marches were so huge, because you had many people just cooped up for months.
It was a perfect storm,
and it was I mean so they felt they needed to get out there and voice their opinion and show some solidarity, and so they otherwise might not have left their apartment, but they were. Yeah,
I think the solidarity element that's almost a given, because let's face it. I mean, okay, who's in favor of police brutality or a man dying? I mean, of course, nobody. But yes, I mean, it's important to express and take a stand. Beyond that, I think just what you said, people were under lockdown all this time. A lot of people out of work. A lot of people are hurting because of being out of work, and just like pent up angst and boredom and fear, frustration, et cetera, et cetera. And so here, it all just came. It all just came together, and it was given a moment and given a stage, and so it's like, there it is. And so, wow. I mean, Ed, I'm really glad you've been out there documenting a lot of this. I mean, how much video footage of this do you think you have in terms of hours?
I'm not a big video guy. I just kind of started dabbling. I bought the latest Samsung, I think it's the S20, and it shoots 4K.
Showing love for the home team, huh?
Yeah,
Hey, it's good equipment.
Someone's got to buy one of. Someone's got to buy one of these Korean devices. I heard they don't really sell too well.
No, they've made some nice camera products. I don't know if it's marketing. I mean, their phones sell great, but I don't know what it is. They've done some decent cameras. I don't know if they haven't marketed right or didn't get the right people in the mix. But yeah, they just don't sell.
I was being a wise guy.
Oh, were you? Go figure. Someone from New York being a wise guy. Okay, first time I heard that.
Yeah, I know. It's being a wise ass is in my blood, I guess. But So how much footage video wise? I did not take that much. I'm not a big video guy. I prefer taking still photos.
Right, me too.
And so when you're trying to take video and I went out.
It messes you up.
A gimbal head. Yeah, it's very difficult to try to do two things at once. It's like you're walking around videoing, but then all of a sudden you see a shot materialize in front of you, and I do have my other hand has my little Ricoh in it, so which is a great little camera for one hand use, and so I'd be walking around like this lunatic with videoing with my left hand, and then with a gimbal head on my left hand, and then my camera in my right hand, and then it just after a while I just kind of gave up on the video thing and said, you know what, I'd rather just take still photos.
Focus on what
I don't have a ton of video footage, but I will send you a couple of links from my YouTube and that I just I'm not even on YouTube that much, but I uploaded some stuff to there
cool.
Over the last few weeks.
Right. Well, my man, we've been yakking away for a while here, and it's good stuff. I'll go ahead and get this all tidied up into a neat little podcast package. And if you think of any links to anything specifically that you mentioned that you want me to put in the show notes, just go ahead and send that to me. Obviously, we'll stay in touch via IG and all that good stuff, and we'll still go out and rock our cameras and do our street photography thing. So Ed, I appreciate you coming on to A Connector and spending some time and sharing some of these New York photographic memories. It means a lot to me, and I know it'll mean a lot to a lot of other people because it's all good stuff.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you reaching out. Thank you very much for having me on the podcast. It's been fun.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right, Mark. Be good.
All right, you too.